So I want to share about what has inspired me, or what inspired me to do the work that I do today, do the purpose that I've really been called to for a very long time. And it goes all the way back to my early 20s, really when I was 20 years old. And I've always been a very curious, explorative person by nature. That's just my natural constitution. I was like asking questions about the meaning of life when I was like 11 years old. So that's always been who I am. And when I was 20 years old, I started to get into some modeling, and I was living in Israel at the time and working. And it was, I was getting a lot of external validation, people telling me that I was beautiful, that I had potential, and I kept saying yes to the opportunities that presented themselves because I was like, okay, this is what I should be doing. And really on the inside, I felt really empty and really disconnected from myself, and quite frankly, really sad because I felt like I was moving forward with something that in no way was filling me up, and I was just following what people told me that I should be doing. So it was a very confusing time for me as a 20-year-old to be navigating this space of what seemed glamorous and exciting, and for me just wasn't at all, and really left me again feeling quite empty and lonely. And I had an experience and the thing is, I was always still saying yes. I was always just like, all right, let me just say yes, let me just like try this on, let me experiment more. And through saying yes so many times, I got myself into a pretty painful situation where very naive young 20-year-old aspiring model meets a mid-30 agent from Los Angeles who tells her that she has a lot of potential, that he wants to help her, that she needs to fly out to Los Angeles so that he can introduce her to different agencies, blah, blah, blah. And I ended up really falling for this and met this person who was making all these what seemed to be exciting promises at the time. And I ended up fighting my parents to go fly out to LA to start working with this agent. And I remember like fighting to get out there with him. I was like, I need to go, like I need to try this. And I didn't even know what I was fighting for. I was just like excited or something. I was fighting for something I didn't even care about. So, retrospectively, it's a confusing thing to think about. And soon after I got out to LA, and I really quickly realized that this guy had no interest in helping me. He had no interest in advancing my career or making connections with people in any way. And his only interest was taking advantage of my body. His only interest was getting me to sleep with him. And this is something that I never really talked about for maybe 5-6 years. So even for me to be speaking about this now is a really big deal. And I've done a lot of work in healing this story. So really what happened was I got out there and realized that he had no interest in helping me. And after the whole weekend I was with him, it was a couple of days, and I just felt really small. Like physically I felt really small. Like I was just like very skinny and like a little girl. I felt like such a little girl, and I wasn't using my voice at all, and I wasn't speaking up, and I was kind of just doing whatever he said to me, and I was just following his whim, and I was just sort of being a passenger seat in my life at that moment. And I was scared, and I didn't know how to speak up for myself, and I didn't know what to say even if I would speak up. And I just felt really small and really powerless, and like a little girl. And I got to one moment in the weekend where he was going out to the gym, and I remember laying really on his corduroy green couch. I'll never forget this moment. And I just had it all just sort of like clicked in that moment. And I was just like, where the fuck am I? Like, where am I right now? How did I get here? And I was speaking about this like literally and metaphorically and symbolically, and I just started bawling. I was like wailing. I was like, how did I let myself get here? Like I'd gone so far over my own edge. I had said yes so many times that I couldn't even recognize myself, and I had no idea how I got to that moment in time, how I allowed myself to get to that moment in time. And I called my friend who lived in LA, and I was like, Jessie, you need to come get me. Like, I can't stay here another minute. And I left, and I got myself out of that situation. And I totally cut him off. I stopped modeling. I just like, and I wouldn't even talk about everything for a long time. I was just like, I can't look at that whole experience. Like, it really did traumatize me, and really did for so many reasons. And I spent, and I'm going to really oversimplify and just give like cliff notes of what transpired after, but I was in therapy for a long time, and I really did some deep healing work, and I'm still doing it today. And the story keeps revealing more parts of it, and so more healing needs to come in different ways, and that's okay. And for the most part, it does feel like a wound that I've really tended to, and a wound that I've really worked on in myself. And the biggest thing that I realized after that moment, and why it was deeply painful and deeply challenging and caused a lot of suffering, ultimately that experience was the greatest gift of my entire life, because it woke me up to this reality of, quite honestly, the word responsibility, which is like basically my favorite word ever. And this idea of, okay, am I going to be a victim of my life? Am I going to be a victim of my circumstances? And I don't mean that a victim in that I was like, what am I trying to say right now? I don't mean a victim where I was taken advantage of, but it's like, I didn't say no, but I also didn't say yes. So it's that space in between. I'm not explicitly saying yes, but I never said no to what happened in LA. And so not saying no to me is almost equivalent to saying yes. And I wanted to get to this place in my life where I was so clear on who I was, where I was so confident in who I was, where I was so crystal clear on what my boundaries are, on what my own edges are, on the parameters of who I am, that I could be like, that I could say no with no explanation needed, confidently, clearly, so a situation like that would never happen to me again. And it really woke me up to this deep inner journey of exploring who I was from the inside out. And quickly, I just want to clarify what I mean by victim versus being victimized, because I do believe that people can be victimized. Like, horrible things can happen to women, horrible things can happen to people, it's not just women, where they are victimized. And it's a horrible thing. And that doesn't mean that we have to be victims of our circumstances. We don't have to continue to be victims, and we can actually, instead of being victim, take responsibility for the things that happen to us. Because we can't control the things that happen to us in life, but we can control how we respond to them, how we take the things that happen to us and respond to them in a skillful way. So for me, taking responsibility for that experience was about getting to know who I was from the inside out. So I stopped being interested in, I never said for a very long time, I never said yes to anything that wasn't really interesting to me, that didn't feel like it fit with, with one of my values or what mattered to me or what I wanted for myself. And it really launched me down this path of deep self-exploration, where I was fueled by the question of who am I, and not what do I want to do or who I want to be in a relationship with. It was just, who am I? And that deep curiosity for who I am really allowed me ultimately in my later 20s to get clear on, well, what's the work that I want to do in the world? And it was the first part of my 20s was this beautiful inner journey of self-reflection and exploration and discovery. And I've taken a lot of that inner exploration and now I've channeled it outward into this very clear purpose, which is around supporting other women to become leaders of their own lives in a similar process that I went through, which is we go in for the sake of going out. So going inwards, learning about who you are so that you can get clear on what's the work that you want to do in the world, on what impact do you want to have, how do you want to contribute in a bigger way. So that's the work that I do with the Datora Collective, which is inspiring women to be leaders of their own lives, to take responsibility for who they are so that they're not victims of their circumstances, but they're the drivers of their circumstances. So that's the inspiration, and that's the story that has guided this purpose and really created it for me.